Truckers of Reddit, what is something you have witnessed driving at night that gave you chills? Many years ago, I was on what is called a meet and turn. This is where a driver that is domiciled out of one city will drive a load halfway to its destination, while a driver domiciled out of that destination will drive halfway with a load that is destined for my city. We meet in a parking lot, switch trailers, and drive back home. I had been on this run for a few months and found that I always got to the meet point about an hour before the other driver. It was a dark and empty dirt lot at about 3 a.m., so I would stretch out across the seat and take a short nap. One night, about 10 minutes into my nap, I was awoken by a barking dog. I tried to ignore it, but it carried on for several minutes and got louder as the dog got closer. Soon, it became apparent that the dog was right outside of my truck, barking at me. Okay, either this dog is Lassie and is trying to alert me to something, or else he is just a pain in the ass and I will need to throw something at him to scare him off. It is important to note that the barking had been going on for a good 10 minutes at this point. So I sat up and looked out my window. Standing there, mere inches on the other side of the glass, was a man of about 35. He was a large fellow and was barking at me. His eyes were crazy and he was frothing at the mouth a little. The scene really held my full attention for a moment. The sheer creepiness of this struck me. Gently and making an absolute minimum of sudden movements, I reached down and started my truck and slowly pulled away. He chased me, much like you might expect an angry dog to do, barking all the while. Needless to say, it played hell with my power naps from then on. Story 2. A friend who is a truck driver told me this one. He was driving through the edge of some bushland on his way back to Perth, Western Australia, when he hit a kangaroo. He stopped the truck, grabbed his knife in case he needed to dispatch it, his flashlight, and got out. He went over to the kangaroo. It needed to be dispatched as it was alive and in immense pain, but he got this weird feeling that he was being watched. He flashed his light around and saw dozens of pairs of red eyes watching him. The whole mob of kangaroos was just standing there, watching him hit one of their mates. Kangaroos have red eye shine. He quickly dispatched the kangaroo, bolted back to his truck, and then took off. He said it was the creepiest crap he had ever seen on the road. Story 3. Where do you want me to start? I'll stick with a story from when I was straight and sober, coming back from Kununurra, very northern town in Western Australia, to Perth one night. Seen no one else on the road for hours, but every now and then, on a long straight, I could see a set of taillights in the distance. All of a sudden, there's the taillights, attached to a trailer that stopped dead in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes and swerved around it, and that's when I realized that the truck, towing 3 trailers, had run off the road into the only large tree for miles. If not for how this ended, I'd laugh my arse off at the irony. I pulled forwards off the road and jumped out. My co-driver, who'd been asleep but got thrown out of the bunk when I slammed on the brakes, was already calling emergency services. As I got to the back of my 3rd trailer, wisps of smoke started from under the cab of the Volvo wrapped around the tree. I raced back, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and was running towards the wreck when I heard a groan from the ditch, about 10 meters in front of the wreck. The driver had been thrown clean through the windscreen, and while he was an absolute mess, at least he was alive. The Volvo was by now in flames, but that just gave me some light to inspect old mate for injuries. And then I heard the sound that even now tears me to the core. A thin, high-pitched squeal, gradually progressing into the most soul-piercing scream I've ever heard. His co-driver had also been asleep in the bunk, and with the truck wrapped around the tree, he was stuck, and I hadn't thought to fight the fire. And now some poor git was burning, impotent and broken. I still drive trucks now. It's my life. It's cost me several relationships and a marriage, but I don't know anything else that I can do. I love the life. I love the freedom. And I always know that I can lose everything in the blink of an eye. But I never again, and never will, drive as a 2-up team. I could never live with a hit a workmate because I ducked up. Story 4. I-25 south of Albuquerque, there's a huge dip straight down one side of a canyon and up the other. I'm a very safe driver, so I took the downgrade slow and crawled up the other side with my hazards on. Looking in my mirror, I see headlights from another truck at the bottom, then 2 jets of flame shoot like 20 feet into the air above it. This truck runs past me doing 80 up the slope. I didn't even know it was possible to put nitrous into a semi. I know it ain't legal, but I thought the devil himself was riding up on me. Story 5. When I was about 12, our family vehicle broke down on the side of the highway. The 2 adults asked me and my 10-year-old cousin to go walking and find a payphone, because one was heavily pregnant and the other was disabled. We walked for about 2 minutes when a trucker pulled over and asked what we were doing. We explained the situation and he said to get in the truck and he would take us to Walmart. He was an older black man with a gray beard and a heavy foreign accent. As we climbed into his truck, he told us we should never, ever, ever get in the truck with a strange man because it's extremely dangerous. But we did it anyway, and he took us to Walmart and we called somebody to come help us. Any random truck driver could have abused us and hit us easily. but thankfully, this one didn't. Story 6, not mine, but my grandfather's. One night after completing his water delivery, he stops at a roundabout to let the other car go through, but it doesn't. And soon people hop out with knives and tools, and they yell at him to cut the engine and to hop out of the truck. He guns it, smashing their car out of the way, and goes around the roundabout and drives to the nearest police station and tells them what happens. He thinks they were trying to steal the Bulldog from his truck, because the only way to get it is to steal it or buy a Mack truck. Story 7. There's another driver where I work that tells a story about driving through the desert in Arizona back in the 80s, with nothing around for miles, when he broke down in the middle of the night. It was an easy fix. His fuel filter was clogged. He drained it a little to free up the fuel and got the truck running about 15 minutes later. He took off down the highway when he saw a man that was out of breath on the side of the highway that was staring at him as he passed. He said it looked like the guy had been running toward him until he got his truck running and drove away. He said if he had been there a few more minutes, the guy would have been able to walk up on him with his head in the engine bay. He said the look on the guy's face gave him chills, and telling the story, you could see it still creeped him out. Story 8, obligatory, not a trucker, but I work as a customer service rep for a trucking company in Omaha. 2 stories that come to mind. Both are quite serious. The first one happened about a year or 2 before I started. One of our local Omaha drivers was grabbing a load from the Council Bluffs rail and headed towards downtown 13th St. A woman had stepped out in front of his truck, and she was passed instantly. Investigators had later found a dyed note she had written shortly before our driver hit her. The driver was a new guy, and he quit immediately after the accident. This one happened shortly after I started working there. We dispatched local and OTR drivers, and one evening, just before shutting down for the day, we start getting multiple calls from people in the California area headed west. Motorists are reporting that one of our drivers is speeding, cutting off people, not signaling, and just all-around reckless driving. We managed to identify the driver in question, call him up, and the guy is inconsolable. Turns out his sister had been murdered at her apartment, and he was literally racing to get back to me as fast as his truck could take him. My boss told him to park the truck immediately and bought 2 plane tickets, one for the driver to fly back to Omaha, and another ticket to fly a volunteer out to California to pick up his truck. Story 9. It was the night before Thanksgiving a few years ago. A woman was crossing a busy highway and got hit by a car. Police were there, but paramedics had not made it yet. The sight of her family holding her lifeless body while cry hysterically is something I will not forget. Story 10. Ex-tow operator got a phone call from my wife who was picking me up at 1 a.m. She calls frantic screaming. There's been an insane accident, but she only sees one car. Our shop was a block away. I get there to light it up with my emergency lights and block the scene for first responders. There's only one car. This is a 6-lane bridge that goes over the thruway. The car's engine is inside the firewall. There's no front of the car. I get out and I'm talking with this guy who's in shock. I ask him, "Were you hurt?" He says, "No, I pulled over because I thought I had a flat tire." I walked around the front to look at the passenger side, and as soon as my foot hit the curb, I heard a loud bang. I turned around and my car's gone. My next words are, "Did you hit?" He said nothing at all. Now I'm more confused and hint at the front of his car is gone. He says, "Nope, that's not my car, TF." So I start looking around. There isn't a car on the road and nothing within eyesight, which I can clearly see in 1/4 of a mile. And there is nothing anywhere. Some lady comes walking by and he says it's her car. She's hammered as hell. Police and fire get there, and for about 15 minutes, he is looking for the car with me. Another cop radios him and says he found the car. It went over 6 lanes and a median, down, then up the thruway on ramp, up a hill, through a fence, off 4 parked cars into a pole half of a mile away. This things was in park. The car's rear bumper was against the front seat, estimated her speed at 100 plus mph and no tire marks. If he would have taken just a 1/10 of a second delay, stepping on that curb, he would have been beyond dead. I was off the clock but helped the police secure the scene until accident investigation showed up. Neither person was hurt and both cars were totaled. I've seen many fatal accidents as a Vault F and a wrecker driver. I have never seen anything like that folks walked away from. I recovered cars and extracted accidents that were nowhere near that bad. Note car was in park, which don't mean a lot. All you have to do is break the park paw and it will roll. But to go that far, over that much stuff and mostly uphill, and her with such extensive intrusion into the car, even bent the pillars, there had to be divine intervention. Story 11. In the 90s, I lived in a logging camp in northern British Columbia. It was a big one, made up of trailers and had about 300 people living there, including families. I drove a water truck on weekends when the camp was on days off. When driving on logging roads, you radio your kilometer markings with the name of the road to avoid collisions. Empty on Windfall 10, to say you were 10 clicks on the Windfall road, heading away from camp, and loaded on Windfall 10 to say you were coming back. Anyways, being a weekend, I didn't expect anyone to be hanging around except a skeleton crew. I had no idea that there was a kid's birthday party up on the top end of the Windfall Road. It's beautiful up there with a clear landing and a pond, so why not? The family hired 2 clowns from a nearby town for the kids. Apparently the clowns wrapped up their show and were heading back to camp, but they were not using the radio. I'm on the road in a big water truck doing 50 kari, and they come bombing around a corner doing 50 in a ducking clown car, and we almost collide. I blasted the horn as this car with a plastic star on its roof goes whipping by with 2 screaming clowns inside, and I could just not figure out what the duck had just happened. Story 12. Not nighttime, but close enough. My dad is a truck driver who regularly makes trips to a nearby major city. This city is known as one of the most dangerous cities in the country, so my dad takes special precautions, one of them being he always leaves several car lengths in front of him at a red light so he can get out if needed. One day around 5 a.m., he was sitting at a red light and someone hit him so hard that his truck moved forward several feet and it knocked the hat off of his head. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw someone run up to the back of his trailer and faint. He decided he should stay put and wait for the police to show up. Turns out a Cadillac had hit him from behind going 110 mph. Both men in the front seat were completely decapitated. You could see the spot on the trailer where their heads hit. The driver was still drunk and high from the night before. My dad was put on leave for several weeks and endlessly questioned. For some reason, the police thought it was suspicious that he had left space between him and the next car. He felt really guilty about it for a long time, but we told him, had he not been there, they would have hit the cars in front of him and more people likely would have died. I was a kid when this happened, and he never let me ride along with him again. Story 13. Short-haul driving on Northway toward Quebec. No cell signal or sparse in that area. My cell rings, WTF, no number, no caller on the other end. I turned off the phone. A minute later, I see this red splatter from the right, slow vehicle lane into the center. And then, like a long drag mark, it ended in the left lane. I slowed a bit and realized it looked like a rolled up carpet. I kept driving. About 3 kilometers ahead, or about a mile and a half, there was another truck pulled over, flashers on, and driver inspecting the front. I pulled over to check on him. Sure enough, he was the one that hit the carpet. A deer, as he told me. He had a push bar on his Volvo, nice rig, and it was covered in blood. Had to radio in for assistance, as he said his temp went up. And there it was. A leg and hoof were literally inside the radiator fins. Nice troopers showed up. Those damn flashing LEDs are way too bright. And I guess called in a HD tow truck. The look on the trooper was priceless, though. He saw the carpet back down the way and had no idea what it was, but put in call for Dot to clean up. Spit up his coffee when we showed him the deer hoof and the radiator. Kinda surreal with the red-blue strobes. Weirdest of all was the driver that hit that deer. Said his phone rang in that same spot mine did. Then he saw the deer and tried to change lanes. No luck. Good thing no one got hurt and no one else around. That made it creepier. Story 14. I suppose I'd better stick a funnier story up to counteract my horror one. One night, I was hauling sulfuric acid from the rail siding to the mine site. Normally do 3 loads a shift, so it was pretty full on. First load of the night, and I get overtaken by a Commodore full of aboriginals. Now, country Australians will recognize the type. No windows, because they're all smashed. Only one headlight, no taillights, and a stream of empty VB cans falling out. A few km down the road, they're stopped off the side of the road, trying to flag me down. Hey, brother, we got no petrol. Can you give us some? Well, actually, no. I run on diesel, you need petrol. Nah, brother, that's okay. We only going to Laverton. Yeah, nah, ain't gonna happen. Sorry, guys. Take off again, warning everyone about the carload of aboriginals right on the side of the highway. Heading back after the first load, and they start jumping onto the road, trying to make me stop. Not happening, guys. Pull on the air horn and drive straight towards them. Sure enough, I'm still 200 ms away when they run off the road. I got back to rail and rang the coppers in Leonora, and they promised to send a car out. Heading out on the second load, and the coppers overtake me before I get there, so no troubles when I went past. Coming back from the second load, coppers are just leaving, and the aboriginals have gotten a fire going and pushed the Commodore well off the road. Third load, and by now it's nearly 3 a.m. Figured it'd be a nice, quiet run. Not ducking likely. Now, for a bit of information, this is a fully loaded triple-trailer road train, grossing 147 tons and coming in at about 40 millimeters long, say 325,000 pounds and 130 feet for our American brethren. I'm doing 90 to 80 km/h, approaching the broken-down Commodore, and the fire's burnt low and it looks like they're all asleep. Then I notice a dark patch in the middle of my lane. I figure it's probably a eod kangaroo, and so I move over to the opposite lane to avoid it. I crap you not. This dark pile jumps up out of my original lane, runs over, and lies down in the middle of the opposite lane, directly in my path. So I move back to my correct lane, and the pile jumps up, runs over, and lies down in his original spot. I start slowing down, spotlights shining, and grab a hold of the damn air horn cord again. I slowly start to swerve into the oncoming lane again, and a second dark pile jumps up off the side of the road, runs out, and lies down in this lane. So now I've got 2 lumps to avoid, so I just gave in to the inevitable. I took my foot off the brakes, slammed the throttle to the floor so hard I nearly punched it through the firewall and aimed for the gap between them. Never let go of the air horn. That was just screaming to the world that I was coming. Well, duck me. There's not enough room between them for me to fit through. And I'm committed. There's no way I can stop in time. So I just screwed up my eyes and kept rolling. These boys gave in. Right at the last second, they both bailed off the road and disappeared into the bush. But I'm willing to bet they never tried that crap again. Story 15. The most frightened I have been driving a truck was going over Donner Pass one night on I-80 towards Sacramento. I had stopped in Reno and checked weather reports. It was early May or late April, can't remember now, but there was still a chance of bad road conditions up there. The weather reports called for light snow flurries, and the cutout site said chain laws were not in effect, so I went on my way. I got up to the top, and suddenly the sky just dumped a blizzard. It was almost total whiteout conditions, and I was past the chain-up areas and the rest areas with no real safe place to stop. I could just barely make out the tracks of the truck ahead of me, and I slowly followed those, praying that he did not run off the road. The worst thing about it, the wind was blowing, making the snow swirl violently in my vision. That caused me to experience this weird vertigo. I have only experienced like that one time. I began to feel like my body was losing and which way was up. Fortunately, it did not last very long. I got down to a lower elevation and it suddenly became heavy rain. I was never so happy to see a rainstorm on a mountain that I can remember. Story 16. This is a story my dad told me. He was a long-haul trucker for about 15 years and currently shorter runs in the tri-state area. He and his older brother were tag team truck drivers back in the early 2000s when timings weren't as closely regulated. They drove 2 trucks and would switch out when their time driving was up to hit deadlines faster. One night as they were driving through Arkansas, I believe, my uncle was leading with my dad behind. My father recalls a giant poof of red, much like when you hit a deer in a semi. The pair thought nothing of it until they pulled over for the night. On my uncle's grill was a hand. Naturally, they freaked the duck out and called authorities. The hand was confiscated, and it was later discovered to belong to a man who had jumped off an overpass and pass. They still made deadline, despite spending a day in jail. They were released when they found the death note in the man's house. Story 17. Not something I've witnessed, but happened to me. I was driving down Hell's Pass in British Columbia in the winter when my truck started to jackknife. The cab was right up against the trailer, and I was being pushed down the hill sideways. 10% grade. I managed to use the trailer brake to bring cab back around and bring the truck to a safe stop, but still scary as hell. Story 18. I have come upon some god-awful accidents at night. Cars completely under trailers with the tops basically sheared off. People laying in the road after being ejected from their car. The roads can be an awful place at night. The creepiest thing I've ever had happen, though, was one night I was making a night drop and kept getting the feeling like someone was watching me. The hair kept standing up on the back of my neck and I just felt uneasy. I decided something was off and left to circle back in the morning. Turns out I'm pretty sure someone was watching me because someone was hit there a few nights later in an attempted robbery. That's one thing the person who trained me drilled into me, and I tell it to everyone I meet. Always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. It's your subconscious's way of telling your brain to pay attention. Always, and I mean always, walk with your head up at night when alone. Walking with your head down, especially looking at your phone, makes you an easy target. Also, never, under any circumstances, leave with an attacker. Your chances of being found at all, let alone alive, significantly drop the moment you leave the scene with the attacker. Story 19. My father-in-law said he was hauling a truckload of Furbies when they started talking to each other. He said they didn't stop talking the whole time he drove halfway across America. Story 20. That happened a long time ago to my grandfather's friend. That friend was an experienced trucker and was kind of training a younger one, taking him to where he went. So it's midwinter and they are driving through a snow desert, stretching for as far as I can see. It's middle of nowhere, and there was not a soul for literally hundreds of kilometers around. I should have clarified that story is taking place in the Soviet Union somewhere near Omsk back in the 60s. This means there was practically no traffic whatsoever because car ownership was very limited at the time. A trucker could drive for hundreds of miles without seeing a single car. While they were driving, an immense blizzard hit them, reducing the visibility to 1 meter max. They kept on driving until they went off the road and got stuck in the snow. Again, with no passing cars, their situation was desperate. There was little food, no heating, no other supplies, and the blizzard could potentially continue for days. After hours of what I imagine was a very uneasy waiting, the fear and panic took the better of the young and inexperienced fellow. He insisted they should walk along the road and try to find help. Keep in mind, there were no towns or cities for hundreds of miles around. The older fellow tells him to calm down and wait. If they went, most likely they would die from exhaustion and exposure, and their best bet would be to at least wait for the sky to clear. There was not much hope even then, but at least a better visibility would give them a slim chance to reach safety. The lad, however, was extremely nervous, and they began to argue. It escalated, and the younger one grabbed a wrench. My grandfather's friend had a knife in his hand, but decided not to risk it. His partner got out of the truck, barely even opening the door, and stumbled away, knee-deep in snow. My grandfather's mate waited there for another day, and in the morning he was rescued by the military, who were sent to look for them, guessing that they got stuck in the snow most likely. He and a group of soldiers left the truck there and continued along the road since the help came from the trucker's starting point, Point A. The other fellow went towards their destination, Point B. In a few kilometers, my grandfather's friend saw a small black object, barely visible, in the sea of white. His heart stopped because he was guessing what this was. He yelled at the soldiers to stop the car. Upon inspection, buried in the snow was his young partner. The black object was his cap, which could easily have been missed, so deep was he buried in the snow. The body was sat upright, frozen and rigid as stone. The trucker told my grandfather that the cold has perfectly captured the expression of profound despair and horror on the young and boyish face of the lad. That fellow blamed himself for the rest of his life for not stopping him, for failing to convince him to stay. Story 21. One time, back in 1975 or 1906, I was coming into a small town in the south when I heard a little boy's voice on the CB. He said, "Breaker 19, is anyone there? Come on back, truckers, and talk to Teddy Bear." I said, "You got it, Teddy Bear." The boy came back, "Appreciate the breaker. Who we got on that end?" I told him my name, and he said, "I'm not supposed to bother you fellows out there. Mom says you're busy and for me to stay off the radio. But I get lonely and it helps to talk because that's about all I can do. I'm crippled and I can't walk." I told him I'd talk to him as long as he'd like. "This was my dad's radio," he said, "but I guess it's mine and Mom's now because my dad's dead. Dad had a wreck about a month ago. He was trying to get home in a blinding snow. Mom has to work now and I'm not much help with my 2 crippled feet. She says, 'Don't worry, we'll make it,' but I hear her crying sometimes late at night. You know, there's one thing I want to see more than anything else. I know you guys are too busy to bother with me, but my dad used to take me for rides when he was home. I guess that's all over now, since my daddy's gone." Not one breaker came on as that little crippled boy talked with me. I tried hard to hold back tears as I thought about my own boy back in Greenville. Teddy Bear said, "Dad was going to take Mom and me with him later on this year. He used to tell me, 'Someday this old truck will be yours.' I know now I'll never get to ride an 18-wheeler again, but this old CB will keep me in touch with all my trucker friends. Teddy Bear's gonna leave you now because it's time for Mom to come home, but give me a shout when you're passing through and I'll sure be happy to talk to you." I said, "Before you go 1010, what's your home 20, little CB friend?" He gave me his address and I didn't hesitate. The freight can wait. I turned my truck on a dime and headed straight for Jackson Street. As I rounded the corner, I got one the heck of a shock. 18-wheelers were lined up for 3 city blocks. I guess every driver for miles around had heard Teddy Bear talking with me on the radio. And that little crippled boy was having a ball, because as fast as one driver would carry him in, another would carry him to his truck and take off again. I took my turn hauling Teddy Bear, and then I carried him back in and put him down in his chair. If I never lived to see happiness again. I saw it that day in the face of that little man. We took up a collection for him before his mama got home. Every driver said goodbye, and when they were all gone, Teddy Bear shook my hand with a mile-long grin and said, "So long, trucker. I'll catch you again." Before I hit the interstate, I had tears in my eyes. I turned on the radio, and I got another surprise. "Breaker 19, came the voice on the air. "Just one word of thanks from Mama and Teddy Bear. We wish each and everyone a special prayer because you just made my little boy's dream come true. I'll sign off now before I start to cry. May God ride with you 10-4 and goodbye." Story 22. Is it okay to tell a story where I was not the trucker, but victim to something very creepy? From a trucker? So, my boyfriend and I were driving on this empty country road pretty late at night on a weekend day around 11 p.m. We're going at the speed limit, 70 km/h. A semi catches up to us from behind and tailgates us so closely we can't even see his front license plate through our back window. There was maybe a distance of 2 milliliters between our vehicles. Not safe at all. So my BF, who's driving, tips on the brakes just enough to make the brake lights go on for a second to signal to the semi to back off a bit, which is perfectly legal here in Germany. The semi does indeed back up for a moment, but then closes up on and is again almost immediately. My BF again uses the brake, this time for a little longer to gently slow us down to 60 km/h. Semi reacts the same way again, but leaves a tiny bit more space between the vehicles this time. Still by far not enough to be safe. We just speed up to 70 km/h again and hope we can lose this idiot soon when turning onto the freeway Autobahn. So after maybe 2 kilometers or so, we reach the freeway. To get onto it, we need to take a left turn off the country road and into the entrance ramp. In the left turn lane in front of us is another semi, which we hadn't noticed anywhere in front of us before, so he must have been quite a long way ahead of us, but whatever, right? Doing the left turn very slowly. And I think maybe he carries some sensitive load. Whatever. We're not in a hurry. So we slow down too and follow the semi into the freeway entrance ramp. The other semi behind us follows suit. In the curve of the entrance ramp, the semi in front of us slows down even more and finally comes to a full stop. We have to stop too, obviously. For a second, I'm thinking, damn, what's wrong now? How annoying. Until I notice that the semi behind us has closed up on us and blocked us in. Let me paint you a picture of this situation. It's 11 p.m., pitch black outside and in the middle of ducking nowhere, with no cars around, wide and far. We're on this curved entrance ramp. To the left and right, there are guardrails, and behind those just dense thicket with bushes maybe 2-3 meter high. We're in my tiny little Chevy Aveo, wedged in between two huge semis, who are, by the way, positioned so that there's no way for us to get by them, even in my tiny car, and have just had some kind of non-verbal altercation with one of them. Yeah, that's when my heart started racing, and I wondered if police could take less than 30 minutes to arrive, if we called then. Thankfully, my BF had the presence of mind to lock our doors. Yay for central locking system. Because just seconds later, the driver from the semi behind us, the tailgating a hole, came stomping up to our car, hammering against the driver's side window and trying to ducking yank the door open. Being unsuccessful, he angrily screamed at my BF to come out and talk about this. Haha, yeah, sure, we'll jump right out. Meanwhile, I'm in full stress mode, fumble my phone out of its mount, and try to get it to stop navigation and start filming with trembling hands. When I finally manage it, the angry a-hole trucker has apparently given up and is stomping back to his truck. After a few seconds, the semi in front of us starts moving again, and finally we're free to go and enter the freeway. Honestly, that was one of the scariest moments of my life, and I'm just thankful to live in Germany where people don't run around carrying firearms everywhere. Story 23, my dad's a trucker, has been for about 50 plus years. The most horrifying thing that he saw happened to him was a really horrid accident on a northern Canadian road. A small car, think like a Volkswagen Beetle, was in an accident. This was fairly late in the night, around 1-2 a.m., and the depth of highways sent out one lone guy as a cleanup worker. My dad drove past the accident and saw this guy throwing up in the ditch. So he stopped and asked him if he was okay and what was going on. So the guy told him about the accident, and my dad saw everything. The guy was really struggling to clean everything up, and my dad, being the type that'll help out anyone and everyone, helped him clean everything up. This was a few years ago, and he still has nightmares about it. Story 24. My uncle is a very skeptic, stoic truck driver that thinks all superstition is nonsense. At family gatherings, he never tells any stories or anything. He mostly just sits around the table and discusses some business ideas with the older men exclusively. There was this one time, however, when he rounded up everyone at a gathering to tell some sort of disturbing story from his last voyage. He seemed on edge that day. He had to do this very long grain delivery to the far north of the country, so he asked a retired friend to come along so that he would have someone to keep him company and help him out in case something went wrong. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning, and they were passing through this very dark road with a soybean field to the left and a dense forest on the right. It was in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and a heavy tropical rain was pouring down. No villages nearby, no towns, no cities, nothing. If they broke down, it would be very hard to get help, so they were both on edge. Suddenly, through the rain, with the help of the faint illumination provided by the truck's headlights, they spot the silhouette of a person walking along the edge of the road around 200 meters in front of them. Their first instinct was to investigate whether this person needed help, because nobody in their right mind would be just strolling along that road at that time of the day. They slowed down the truck and approached the person. It was a bride, wearing a long white wedding dress, carrying her shoes. They further slowed down the truck and lowered the window to talk to her. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride?" No response. She just kept walking while staring straight ahead. After insisting a few times, they rolled up the window and took off because they started to suspect that she could be helping robbers to set up a trap for them. As soon as they passed the bride, they took a look at the rearview mirror to see where she was, and she was nowhere to be found. Here's where this story gets really disturbing. Once they reached the nearest village, they told this story to a baker working at the mini market where they decided to stop to have some brunch. They say they will never forget the look of horror in that man's eyes after hearing it. He was stunned for a few seconds, but after recomposing himself, he said, "Yesterday my son went to a friend's wedding and came back around 30 minutes later saying that apparently the ceremony had been canceled or something because neither the bride nor the groom showed up. I just heard a few minutes ago in the radio that the guy who is now missing lost his bride on the day of their wedding for no apparent reason." Story 25. I was driving on a 2-lane road through New Brunswick, Canada, HVY 17 towards Glencoe, around 3 a.m. I has never driven this road and there was nothing around. It was in the middle of nowhere. I hadn't seen another car for at least an hour. I passed 2 people and a car on the side of the road, looking at a car that was flipped over in the ditch, but still had its lights on, so it looked like it happened recently. The car on the side of the road had no apparent damage. I initially drove past them about 200 meters, then stopped and reversed back to them, and got out to see if they needed help or a phone or anything. I asked if everything is okay, and they responded in French, not uncommon in that part of the country. So I just motioned to my phone like, "Do you need my phone, Lash? Do you need to phone someone?" They looked at me and said something else in French, and I got the feeling they didn't need me. So I started walking back to my truck, while looking back at them to confirm they were okay if I left. It just seemed surreal after driving for a long time and seeing no one on the road. These 2 guys were just standing on the side of the road talking and looking at a flipped over car and didn't seem to be doing anything about it. Also, later that same morning, around 7 a.m., I passed a car that had just hit a moose, waiting for paramedics. Story 26. The scariest thing that has ever happened to me. About 10 years ago, I ran out at night to a 7-Eleven to get a pack of smokes. There was a 7-Eleven right outside of my subdivision. I'm standing in line, and a huge dude gets in line behind me. No big deal. I'm not a small woman myself. I'm about 5'10" and at the time was almost 300 pounds. But this dude was substantially larger. I'd say about 6'5", close to 400 pounds. He complimented my necklace, and I just got the creepiest vibe from him. And I never ignore creepy vibes. I know better. I said thank you, got my smokes, and got in my car. As soon as I'm pulling away, he's getting into his truck and starts it. I pull out of the parking lot left. So does he. I pull a right turn into my subdivision. So does he. I go up the 2 more streets and go to pull a right onto my street. So does he. At this point, I'm pretty freaked out. So instead of parking outside of my house, I just keep driving around my neighborhood. He followed me around for 20 minutes, taking every single turn I did. I was just about to call the cops or my dad or someone when he gave up and turned down a street that takes you out of my subdivision. Story 27. My mother's a long-haul trucker. Her husband as well. I actually went on the road with them for about 3 months when I was in my early teens. It was a really neat experience. Pissing in bottles, watching my mother read a book while she was driving, watching my stepfather shave while he was driving. I remember one night my stepfather and I were sleeping in the back bunks, and I remember hearing over the pay someone yelling to be careful that there was a big rig going southbound in the northbound lane. My stepfather woke up to tell my mother to be careful, and he just started screaming at her. Turns out it was her who was asleep and driving down the wrong lane on the freeway. Some other interesting things. We were supposedly hauling gun parts into Nevada. We had a 3-car armed escort. We delivered the gun parts to a tiny truck stop in the middle of the Nevada desert. When we got there, the escort taped up our windows and unloaded the truck. We were not allowed out of the truck. We're not allowed to leave until we were completely unloaded. We had speculated that we might have actually been hauling missile parts because the security was really tight. They had hauled gun parts before and had an escort before, but never 3 armed cars. It was cool because we got to bypass all way stations and we were even allowed to speed, and it kind of felt like we were doing something super important and exciting. Although, in all probability, it was probably something not all that interesting, just sensitive. Lot lizards, truck stop escorts, were another interesting thing I was introduced to. Finally, my mom and I had parked the truck at a Flying J to get some food. We ate and came out. It was evening time, and the parking lot was kinda empty. Seemingly out of nowhere, this massive black man steps out from behind a parked car and starts crying. My mother was already reaching in her bag for the .380 she always carried with her whenever she left the truck alone. The man, I think, realized my mom was reaching for her gun, and he just said, "Please, ma'am, I'm awfully hungry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to bother you. I swear I just need some food. I haven't eaten in days. I hate to ask you, ma'am, but please can you buy me a burger?" The guy was full on sobbing, and my mother, who was obviously shaken, said she didn't have any money. I had $50 spending money on me, and I felt he was genuine, and I gave him the entire $50. The man just started crying again, took the money and said, "God bless you both," and he went into the truck stop. My mother said I was stupid and he was going to spend it on crack. But I said I think he was really starving. We watched him, and sure enough, he went in and went directly to the food counter and ordered probably a dozen burgers. That was a good day. Story 28. Wouldn't call myself a trucker, but have about 100,000 miles under my belt so far, off and on over the last 5 years. But this story happened when I wasn't in a semi. But at the time I was living in North Dakota and had family in Indiana and was on my way back from Indiana. They were predicting a snowstorm Saturday afternoon, so I decided to leave as the snow was starting, which I admit wasn't the smartest idea, but I'm a competent driver and wasn't in a hurry. So I figured I could take things slow and don't have to push it. But things were slow going through Illinois, as expected, but the weather cleared up once I started heading north and things were fine for a while. Now skip forward to Minnesota. Now I should say, I had woke up about 7 a.m. on Saturday and left Indiana at about 5 p.m. and rolled through Minneapolis at about 3 a.m. local time. Sunday morning, and only saw one car driving around in town, but that's not the crazy part. I get to Fergus Falls, which is my exit, at about 5:45 a.m. And the Sunday drivers are just starting to get out and driving. I look to my left, just trying to pass the time, and notice a reflection in my window from the right side of the vehicle. So I look over, half expecting to miss what it was since I had the cruise set to 75 miles per hour, and I see a person walking at a normal gait, like you'd see someone walking down the sidewalk, but they were matching my speed. Almost like they were skating along. It's very hard to explain. So I stop at a gas station that was at my exit to use the facilities and get a drink and explain what happened to the male, this is important, attendant, since there was no one else in the shop. An IDK of he could tell I'd been awake for 23 hours at that point. Or it was his stock response for someone seeing the same thing. But as soon as I explained it, his face went blank, asked how long I'd been awake and asked where I was from. I answered his questions, and without time to think, he told me to get on the road. Go home, sleep, and don't talk to anyone around there about what happened that night. So I did, but it kept bugging me, what had happened. So time comes for me to head back to Indiana for some family time, and I get the idea to leave early in the morning, to go past that exit at roughly the same time, and even stopped at that gas station at roughly the same time. So I get to the station, and there was a woman behind the counter this time, so I asked the girl behind the counter where the morning guy went, and she said she has worked the morning shift, 4 a.m. to 10 a.m., 7 days a week. For the previous 2 years, never missed a day and didn't know who I was talking about and didn't remember seeing me in there. So I didn't say any more. Thanked her for the coffee I had bought and made my way to Indiana and never told a soul. Until now. Story 29. Well, not a truckie, but I do a bit nighttime driving here out on the road when hardly anyone is around. Anyway, I live in Niswayesh in Australia. I need to take a leak, so I pull off the highway somewhere near Bargo around 1 or 3 a.m. While the stream is flowing, I felt like I was being watched. I nervously check for headlights on the Harrison or the soft sound of tires on the road, but nothing is coming. I'm just about to finish and I hear a loud snap of a twig. I'm scanning in that general direction, but I can only make out a long shadow, and I thought I heard a low growling noise. I quickly reach for my torch and turn it on. I see nothing. Unfortunately, the batteries had almost died too. But whatever it was, I could hear the faint footsteps running off in the distance. Story 30. When I was only new to the truck driving game, I had a job driving all over continental Europe. I'm Irish. I was sitting in a restaurant and on the French side of the Mont Blanc tunnel and heard a couple of old boys tell a story about a rookie who lost control of his truck on the way down the mountain. He rang his mother and told her what was happening just before he crashed off the side and was sadly passed. Story 31. Not a trucker, but 10 years ago, as I bicycled through Belize, I stopped to sneak camp at a day-use area, which was a small parking lot, handful of picnic tables, and a short trail to a blue hole, lots of them in the region. I enjoyed a nice swim after every day user was gone, and pitched my tent next to a picnic table. I wake up around 3 a.m. to the headlights of several trucks. Being in Belize and Belize being Belize, I didn't think twice and ran into some bushes wearing only my underwear. A dozen of shadows came out of 2 trucks, rolling big empty barrels across the parking lot and into the woods. Came back with the barrels full, loaded up the trucks, and took off, all without noticing me. Didn't sleep super well after that. Story 32. Not my story, but my dad has been a cross-country trucker all my life. 30 years. The one story that I remember seeing really impact him emotionally was when he was shot at while driving in Mississippi a number of years ago at night. Blew out his driver's side window. I guess the cops said that it had happened other times and they never caught the guy. He had to finish his run and then came back to New England with his window still damaged. Story 33. My buddy is a trucker. He was stopped at this rest stop somewhere in Ohio. He was outside of his truck checking something near the rear trailer wheels. A car pulled up beside him and the driver rolled his window down. The driver was a middle-aged male and creepily asked my buddy if he wanted to have a good time. My buddy responded, "Nah, leave me alone." The guy driving the car sped off. Around 2 hours later, my buddy went back outside to check something near the rear wheels again. As he was bent down, he heard this car approaching quickly. It was the same man he encountered earlier. The man attempted to hit my friend with his car at probably 25 miles per hour, but was unsuccessful as my friend jumped under the trailer. The driver of the car stopped about 30 feet from the trailer and put his car in reverse. As he began to back up, my buddy grabbed his tire iron and threw it at the car. The tire iron smashed through the rear window of the car. The driver sped off immediately. My buddy didn't get a plate number or a great description of the vehicle or guy, as it all happened at night. He was upset that he lost his tire iron though. Story 34. Not a trucker, but did a lot of night driving for work. Going 50 mph up a hill in rural Maryland around midnight on a weekday. I noticed rapid and nearby motion out the driver's side window and glance over just in time to see a perfectly lit buck with his antlers down charging the car window at a distance of about 4 inches. Nearly gave me a heart attack. I looked almost exactly at the time of impact. This deer was massive and it had a very large rack of antlers. His left antler impaled and removed my side mirror, and both antlers impacted the glass door and SCD down the side of my car as points started breaking off from the force of impact. The window held, but I had several bloody SCCs down the side of the car from the antlers, no mirror, and a huge dent where the body came around. He tried to put his ass through the back fender. I quickly pulled over and hopped out to see him stand up and prance away with my mirror housing still impaled by his mangled antlers. I've never hit a deer, but one damn sure hit me. 2. Driving from Flint, my airport to St. Charles or some bullcrap place near it around 1 a.m. on a weekday in the winter. This is a diagonal drive across a north-south grid of rural farm roads, so lots of turning left and right to work from one corner to the other. I come across a large truck parked across the road with all its lights removed. Not off, removed so my lights weren't even reflect off anything. I nearly T-boned the thing going fast enough to die, but the rental had new tires and good brakes. Ditches on either side, so I can't go around and I don't want to find out if someone is there that can move it, so I very quickly J-turn and backtrack to one of the many alternate routes that a grid system gives you. I'm already freaked out and hopped up on adrenaline from almost dying to what appears to be a trap. Not having cell signal, Google Maps is struggling, so I'm just kind of winging it to go vaguely knee and end up boxed in by a river and needing to backtrack south. What do I see but a truck barreling down the road at me with no headlights, just those old school roll bar lights, 4 circle lights. Sure, I'm gonna be murdered by some Midwestern flatlander and caught in the middle of a straight road pointed right at them. I just immediately turn into the farmhouse right next to me. Those mother duckers turned in right behind me. Luckily, the driveway was a circle around a tree, and I just popped out the other side and redlined that rental car until I made it to a road I knew would cross the river. Maybe it was a coincidence, but I really don't think it was. Story 35. Not a trucker anymore, but I was for 1,005 years. From March 2016 to November 2017, I live in Santa Catarina, a cold state in Brazil, and there is a lot of myth and folklore in my region, South Brazil, about demon possession, Satanism, black magic, devil worshippers, and stuff like that. And sometimes some of these myths are real, like these in Rio Grande do Sul. My grandfather has a small business, and in 2015 I had no job and decided to work with him. I worked in the office, but sometime later we needed to deliver stuff to a neighbor state, and I became the one that would do that. I would deliver from East Santa Catarina to West Rio Grande do Sul, like 800 kilometers, driving like 13 HRs on the wheel. And I did it a lot of time, these delivers, and one of them, something happened. It was July 2016. I was in Cachoeira do Sul, a small town in Rio Grande do Sul, and I was going to Cordillera, another small town. It was night and I was alone on the road driving, and I saw some light in the wood and some shadows. My curiosity made me stop and try to peep to figure out what it was. As I was entering the woods, I saw a bunch of folks in white cloths with a fire dancing and sing some stuff with animals and small guns. A friend of mine were from Voodoo, Candomblé, and Umbanda. And what I saw in the wood was nothing like it. That seems like something out of a horror movie, you know? I was deeply terrified. And soon I got back to the truck. I flee faster than I could. After that, I comment that with some folks in Cachoeira do Sul, like the owner of the place where I had my dinner that night. And they said that what I saw was normal there. And that happened often in West Rio Grande do Sul. It was one of the most creep stuff that I saw in my life. And today when I'm driving alone, I never stop the car near of the woods because of that. Story 36. I'm not a trucker, but my job does warrant a lot of nighttime driving. Most terrifying thing I've ever seen at night was when I was driving home from a friend's graduation party. It was 1 in the morning and he lived in a pretty rural area, which was where the party was hosted. Shortly after I pulled out of his drive and went down the road, there was this collection of beat-up mobile homes, and not a place you want to be unless you're cooking meth or doing something illegal. On the side of the road just past this, there was a grown man and a little girl knelt down on the side of the road doing something. They both looked up and just stared at me as I drove past. I first shook it off until my dad mentioned it to me a few minutes later. He He was taking a different vehicle home and left a little while after me. A few months later, we found out from the same family friend that there were some people that collected roadkill in said collection of trailers, and that cops were always there for something. Story 37. I'm not a trucker, but I have a story from my cousin. We live in Pennsylvania near the Keystone Restaurant and Truck Stop, but this happened about a few miles away more in town. She was on her way home from class, and she was first in line at the traffic light. It turns green. She starts to press her foot on the gas pedal so she can go, and out of nowhere, a semi-truck comes barreling through a red light. He almost hit her. If she had gone just a little faster, or if he had been there a mere few seconds before, he would have hit her going from the driver's side and likely hit her on impact. Seconds later, a police car came from somewhere and chased the trucker down, unsure of why he was speeding through a 45-mile-an-hour area with 4 traffic lights in general, but he did it anyway. He may have been drunk or just an idiot driver who thought he could make it through a late yellow light, but regardless, it was a crap your pants moment, no doubt. Her father, an emergency responder and firefighter, told her to wait just a few seconds and make sure no one is still going through before you go on a green light. I follow that advice to the best of my ability. So does she. Not to mention, since our area does a lot of coal mining, we have a lot of coal truck accidents. I am terrified of coal trucks. I have passed by too many by the side memorials for people who have been hit by coal truckers. One exit we have is littered in traffic lights and caution signs because it's a common area for coal truck accidents. I wish they would do that more, because some areas it should be illegal to drive coal trucks on. Super dangerous. My dad said his coworkers plan their routes and scope them out because they're worried they'll get into a bad place and wreck. Needless to say, we aren't big fans of semi-trucks and tractor trailers in general. Down here, we get truckers who are just plain rude. So honestly, I love whenever I hear stories about responsible drivers who do their best and err on the side of caution, follow the rules, etc. I avoid passing trucks on highways, and I always keep a good distance from them if I can. I just feel super uncomfortable, and I hate it when they pass you. I can literally feel the car being blown over by the wind to the side of the road when they do. Story 38. A month ago, a truck driver passed me at least 60 mph and crossed to the other lane to get ahead of everyone else before crossing back to our lane. Thing is, he couldn't go back to our lane because it was closed up ahead. It was a narrow 2-lane road, like each lane for an opposite direction, and they were doing road work on it, so they closed one lane, put a bunch of signs and traffic cones and cops to direct the traffic because there was only one lane left and cars coming from both directions couldn't ride there at the same time. That would cause a head-on collision, which is why our side of the traffic stopped entirely because there was a giant glowing red X in front of us and a traffic cop signing us to stop because there were cars from the other direction. But the truck driver didn't see the cars coming at him yet from behind all the red cones and signs and just ignored all glowing red lights motioning him to stop or at least slow down and kept going, cutting an entire line of cars who did stop until he reached the head of the line just when cars started coming out from the opposite direction and right at him. Never seen a truck brake so hard in real life before. Thankfully, it was a small truck because he stopped pretty quickly and was even able to move a few inches to side so he wouldn't block the road completely. Don't know who got scared the most. The truck driver, the poor driver who he nearly crushed into, or the other drivers watching it. All the signs and cones made it hard to see vehicles coming from the other side, so the truck driver thought the other lane was empty. But come on, there's a giant ass X few meters ahead of you, and all the other cars standing behind it didn't clue you in that the road ahead is probably blocked. What made you think you could cut your way back into the lane? A small car maybe, but a truck? Story 39. Not my story, but my grandfather's. My grandfather was a truck driver for about 26 years, so he was pretty good at it. He would normally be gone for days at a time, so he had a sleeper rig with a bed, kitchenette, and stuff like that in the back. Bear with me, this is important. He would normally take naps in the bed in the back in the yard when waiting to get his haul for the day, and would leave the truck on for air conditioning or heat. So this time he decided to sleep in the driver's seat and was asleep for about 10 or 20 minutes. At this point in the story, I should mention that my grandfather is 69 years old, but this was about 4 or 5 years ago when this happened. He's a Vietnam War veteran with a Purple Heart and multiple health conditions because of heavy smoking during this time. And he also has some severe PTSD from it, but he is still as strong as an ox. So back to the story. While he was asleep, a guy that was high at the time of the incident. He had 3 warrants out for his arrest and wasn't allowed to own any weapons, but of course he did. He jumped the fence to get into the truck yard and began to put multiple rounds into the windshield of my grandfather's truck. During this, my grandfather, of course, woke up and dove into the back of his truck and called the cops. After 10 more rounds flew through the windshield, the guy jumped the fence and ran back into the woods and hid there until the cops later found him. My grandfather was all okay and later found out that the guy had been living in the woods for about 3 months before he shot at him. He also later found out that the guy shot at him because my grandfather stole his spacesuit, which my grandfather did not do. Everyone is okay now, and the guy is in prison for 1 more year. Story 40. My dad used to drive for a commercial grocery store back in the day. This was probably around 1975. The route he drove took him past a hospital for the mentally ill. Apparently, the place wasn't known for its security because my dad said he would pass people walking on the road in varying levels of nudity. He said he would see about 1 or 2 escaped patients a week, and eventually it became a pretty normal thing. He told me, the creepiest part is sometimes they would look at the headlights the way a deer or wild animal would, and he was terrified that one day they would just run out in front of the truck. They never did though, just stared and watched him drive by. Story 41. I'm not a truck driver, but I have a story about almost getting hit by one, if that counts. So one weekend, me and a friend tried to make a 24-plus-hour road trip from Colorado to Oregon with a detour in Montana in the span of 2 days in the middle of winter. The route we were taking was through the mountains the majority of the way, so we were either driving through snowstorms or ice-covered roads the entire time. Stupid, I know. I was more comfortable driving on ice, so I took over the wheel once the snow subsided. It was only the evening, but there weren't too many cars on the road, given the weather. Nonetheless, everything was going smoothly until I spotted a truck parked in the middle of one of the lanes, halfway across a bridge. My nerves immediately started up, but I reassured myself that the trucker probably needed a rest form driving in such dangerous condition. However, as soon as I entered the bridge, the truck suddenly turned on its engine and slowly began veering into my lane. It felt like there was nothing I could do. I couldn't change lanes because the truck was now taking up both, and I definitely couldn't hit my brakes because the extra ice from the bridge would surely spin us right off the cliff to tumble easily 2,000 feet down. The only option I had was to speed up, veer the car, and try to reach the end of the bridge before the truck finished changing lanes. Luckily, I was able to slide into a snowbank at the very last millisecond. The weird thing is, the sky was clear, albeit dark. I had my lights on, flashed my brights at the truck on the way towards it, and even honked when it began changing lanes. Yet it didn't stop to see if I was okay, and decided to change lanes right in front of the only car that was on the road. The fact that it was parked in the middle of a bridge is weird enough, but all of the other crap it did on top of that. I know he probably wasn't trying to murder me, for real, who would risk damaging their truck just to hit 2 strangers, and was just super drunk and or tired, but Simon, man. Story 42, not a truck driver. And this happened in 98. I was 12, and we were moving from Indiana to New Mexico in early mid-June. We were moving ourselves, so we had 2 of the biggest U-Haul trucks you can get with a trailer on each. One had a sailboat that my grandpa gave us. The other had our minivan. Both trucks were full. We were just outside St. Louis, Missouri, and it was kind of an overcast, rainy day. I was in the truck with my mom driving while my dad was in the truck behind us with my little brother. We communicated via CB radios. The highway was pretty packed, but moving nicely. Suddenly, this jackass comes speeding up next to us at an insane speed and starts trying to push us off the road. We were on the outside lane, and right to the right of us was a pretty steep hill that went into some forests. This a truck towing a decent-sized boat, legit was trying to push us off the road so hard that the truck literally tilted up off of the 2 left wheels, and we tilted over the edge of the hill as this monster sped by us. I know this because I saw the hill looming below me, and my dad and brother saw everything from the truck directly behind us. Luckily, we did not go over the edge, and the truck was able to get back on all its wheels. My mom and I were absolutely terrified. She said she looked at me, and I was as white as a sheet. I had never been that scared in my life, to my knowledge. The people who drove up next to us after the crazy PPL had sped off ahead, weaving through traffic faster than everyone else, gave us this weird look like, "WTF were you doing?" Like we were in the wrong. That still pisses me off 21 plus years later. We were able to get off at the next exit and went to a truck stop where I was shaking like a leaf and my mom had a panic attack. I'm pretty sure I had a mild one as well. We came out relatively unscathed, but yeah, whoever that was can duck the duck off forever. Story 43, I'm not a trucker, but I was driving home one night and it was Christmas time, it's important, and I'm driving home in a country road in Southern Virginia. There was a decent number of houses around, all had their lights on, and there was no other cars on the road. As I'm driving, I look out my right window and there's a train barreling straight at me, 50 feet away. Apparently there was no gate on the particular crossing, and all the Christmas lights made the bigger red crossing lights look like just another light, since there was no other cars around and it was a neighborhood. The train didn't blow its whistle for obviously reasons. It's scary to know another few seconds later, and I would be dead. Story 44. Okay, so not a trucker, but weird as duck, so we'll tell story anyway. I was working in London a couple of weeks ago. Myself and 2 colleagues, we were heading back to our hotel after a late job. when we decided to visit an abandoned cemetery. We do a lot of urban exploring when we work away to pass the time. Anyways, my colleague wants to visit the cemetery, which had been abandoned and is in the middle of the woods. Being late, we thought this would be awesome. We arrived at the cemetery and made our way out of the lit car park. As soon as we got there, alarm bells should have rang. While my colleague answered the call of nature, a man got out of a Bentley in the car park and just stood by us hovering. Weird, he then walked back to car and drove away. We carried on exploring the cemetery by torch for the next 40 minutes or so. When we had enough, we found a long, straight path about 500 meters long, leading back to the car park. This was when we noticed someone walking towards us. We hid out torches and waited to see what she was doing. Another person appeared to come from behind and walk into the dark cemetery on their own, with no torch, while the other was carrying on towards us. We were starting to feel unsettled. For one, we were three burly-looking blokes, stood in the dark, wearing black. As the person got closer, it was an "oh, duck" moment. We look really fishy and are going to look dodgier when we turn torches on. Well, this person is about 5 meters away when my colleague puts his torch on and screams, "What the duck?" This guy is stood there in just shorts, no top, and a ducking dog lead and collar on. He says, "Evening, we ducking Scarper back to the car park, only to see 6-7 cars parked there with single blokes and all on their phones." Story 45, not a truck driver, but I saw a truck flip over and it gave me chills. So here's that story. My boyfriend at the time and I decided to walk to McDonald's and smoke on the way. We finish our joint and are about to cross the street to McDonald's. Right beside the entrance, exit of the Ambassador Bridge, the busiest truck crossing between USA and Canada. As we wait to cross, a truck comes zooming by and drives along the curve to get onto the bridge. But he took the curve too fast and the truck flipped right onto its side. The momentum kept the truck going though, so it was dragging across the road and sparks were flying everywhere. It flipped probably about 5 meters away from where we were standing. After about 10 seconds of dragging, it comes to stop. And all of a sudden, a wave of Border Patrol officers start flooding out and heading toward the truck. Myself and my ex, high as balls, could barely believe what just happened. But we hightailed it out of there. Story 46. I'm not a truck driver, but a couple years ago, I was driving home around 1 a.m. with my girlfriend after a graduation party. While coming around a turn, we saw headlights on the side of the road. As soon as they saw us, they suddenly shut off. Now, being terrified teenagers, we slowly drove up and I was honestly expecting shadowy figures to come out of the trees and try to rob us. But then as we got closer, I saw there were 2 cars blocking the road and a man approached our car with a flashlight. As soon as he saw we were just teenagers on the way home, however, he turned and yelled something. Then all of a sudden, flashlights and headlights lit up all around us. Turned out we had interrupted a drag race being set up on a country road, and they had turned off the lights in case we were police. It was a big relief as they moved the cars off the road and let us pass. Story 47. Not me, but my aunt. She was driving at 1 a.m. down rural roads in the UK. They tend to be quite narrow, no paths and no lighting, and didn't see a jogger in the road, wearing all black. Sadly, she hit him and he passed. The emotional toll on her was too much. She quit driving and became reclusive for some time. Story 48. Not a trucker, but it made me cold to the core. I live in a small village in Scotland, and one night a friend and myself were driving back from Glasgow. 40 miles of country back roads, and we were about 25 miles into our trip and no house near us. Never seen anything strange on this road in the last year of living in this area. This night we came around what locals call the Gits turn, and as we came onto the 4 miles straight after it, there was a dude in the middle of the road, maybe in his early 20s, dragging a deer corpse up the tarmac. When we slowed down to pass him, he just stopped dead in the road, stared us right in the eyes and just crouched down to start patting, stroking the deer's head and smile. Just didn't sit right with me. That's not normal on the best of days, but he stroked the deer in the same way I pet my dog when she's sleepy. Now, me and my friend are a pair of well-built lads, heavily covered in tattoos with dreads, piercings. We don't usually have to worry about our safety or anything, as folk normally want a conversation with us before they want an argument. But I'd be lying if I sat here and said we both didn't have a wee shout and question freak out about it after we got a few miles away. This was a few weeks ago now, and none of the local villages have had any chatter about the bloke and his deer. But I'm keeping a listen out and been taking less night walks with the dog as of recent. Story 49, north of Fairbanks, AK. I was pulled off the side of the road to perform a check of my hazmat load I just picked up 30 minutes prior. It was in January. It was clear. It was bitter cold. It was very dark. This stretch of highway was pretty desolate, and with a long straightaway in both directions. The check was uneventful with no vehicles passing me. The whole 10 minutes I was out of the cab. I rounded the front of my truck to climb back in, and as I grabbed the handle to step up in the cab, I heard a noise, sort of like a growl and laugh. The closest thing I could compare it to would be how the devil would be depicted of laughing in a movie. I paused and looked around, and thought maybe I was hearing things. I got inside the cab and logged my check. That's when I looked over to the passenger side window and seen 3 bright lights exit from the tree line, about 50 feet away, and just hover next to my passenger door's window. The pace at which they closed that distance was amazing. I can't accurately tell you how long they were hovering. 5 seconds, 30 seconds. It seemed like time just froze for me. Never experienced that feeling before. Then in an instant, they shot to the back of the truck and just ducking disappeared. As I was putting it into gear, after realizing what I'd just witnessed, I heard a couple loud bangs on my driver's door like someone was hitting it. I flipped on my accessory backing lights as I drove off, and there was nothing or nobody there. To this day, I refuse to stop anywhere near the area where I had experienced that. Story 50. I'm a truck driver, and I drive between Vancouver and Whitehorse, both in Canada if you're unaware. So I do this route quite often, and it is quite a long trip, a bit over a day. So this one time, after about 12 hours into driving, I pulled into a rest stop to get something to eat and get some sleep and all that. So I got something to eat, then went back to my cab to take a nap. So as I'm trying to fall asleep, I hear a car door close behind my truck. So I looked in my rear view mirrors and I see 2 people getting out of the car and start walking towards the cab as if they were trying not to be noticed. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed one of them was carrying some sort of rifle. I don't know much about guns, so I can't tell you what kind. And the other had some sort of pistol. So at that time, it was my first reaction to turn on the truck and get out of there. And that's what I did. So I hauled as fast as I could for about 10 minutes down the road, then I pulled over and called the cops and explained what happened. So about 10 minutes late, a cop came up to me and explained to me what was happening. So it turns out that there were 2 people who were on a hit spree in the area who 100% hit people. So who knows, maybe those 2 were the killers. Story 51. My dad, a truck driver in the Netherlands for about 30 years now, was leaving our town at 3 a.m.-ish to do the deliveries to the stores. He drives off with a colleague, and a kilometer outside my town, he hits the brakes because there's a horse on the road, alive. His colleague behind him stops as well and is informed about the situation over the CB radio. 2 trucks which look the same, both yellow-blue Scania box trucks with an additional blue trailer, are standing still on a B road in the middle of the night. A guy pulls up behind them in an 80A6 station wagon. He, of course, did not know what was going on, and after a few minutes, the horse wasn't moving. He got very annoyed with the trucks standing still, so he absolutely floored it to go past them. He crashed into the horse, hit it, and totaling his car. Guy went to the hospital, and this all happened under the eye of my father. Pretty terrifying crap. The guy ended up surviving, but my dad was pretty messed up about it. Story 52. Not a trucker, but I've never had the opportunity to share this, and hopefully someone has some answers. While this story may seem like it's not that creepy, it was insanely creepy for my friends and I. A few months ago, me and about 5 friends rented a car and took a 10-hour road trip up to New Jersey for a music festival. We chose to leave out late, like 9 p.m., so that we could avoid most of traffic by driving through the night. After driving through Ohio and parts of West Virginia, we were in Pennsylvania. Somehow or another, my buddy's GPS was set to avoid toll roads, so we ended up driving back roads for close to 50 miles through Pennsylvania. Now, growing up in Kentucky, back roads are not scary to us anymore. We've seen it all. After a while, we started driving through these small, isolated towns. Tons of houses, but no gas stations, stores, etc. It was around 2 to 3 a.m. at this point, and we noticed that none of those houses had lights on in the houses, and none of them had cars in the driveway. Yes, it was very early in the morning, but for not a single house to have a kitchen light or porch light on or something felt really odd. The weirdest part was that every house we passed had a candle in every window. For being 6 adult men, we were all pretty creeped out and didn't really know why. The candles in the windows was what really kind of creeped us out for some reason. Does anyone know what those mean? Story 53. Dad was a trucker. Saw a ghost woman dancing to Frank Sinatra at 2 o'clock in the morning on a deserted mountain in the middle of winter. I'm not a trucker, but my dad was for 15 plus years, and he tells this story all the time. One night around 2 a.m., my dad was hauling coal in a semi off of a place called 22 Mountain. He got super tired and decided to pull off and get some rest before finishing his haul the next morning. Just as he was drifting off to sleep in the bed in the back of his truck, he heard the song "I Love You, Baby" by Frank Sinatra start to play right outside of his sleeper cabin. Considering that this mountain was pretty much deserted, even on its busiest days, he was pretty confused and went to the front of the truck to see where it was coming from. There, smack dab in the middle of the road, was a woman that appeared to be dancing. She had on a white party dress, her hair was cut in a bob, and one high heel as the other one was nowhere in sight. My dad started the truck and sped off, knowing that something about her wasn't right. As he was driving off, he claims that he drove straight through the woman like she was made of mist, and he saw her in his review mirror, virtually unaffected. Story 54. My dad has been a truck driver for 30 plus years. He's never had any accidents until a few months ago. He works in the oil fields out in West Texas. There are lots of accidents in this area, and many are fatal. So he was driving along the highway going about 70 mph, which is the speed limit in this area. First, he is nearly sideswiped. Then a few minutes later, he sees a semi blow through a stop sign. Behind that semi is a Ford truck. The driver is looking at his passenger, isn't paying attention, and passes the stop sign. He starts to brake, but of course my dad isn't able to stop in time, so turns his truck to the right and T-bones the truck on the rear passenger door, drags the truck down the road into an intersection and nearly collides with another semi that was driving in the oncoming lanes. Both trucks are totaled. He showed me the video from his truck after, and holy crap, it was insane. The other driver clearly passes the stop sign and never looks to his left. My dad avoids hitting the driver's side door by just seconds. At time of impact, the front of his truck just explodes and the hood flies open. The windshield cracks and there's fluids just flying everywhere. Amazingly, his truck did not catch fire. And because of his quick actions, the two guys in the Ford truck lived. Had he not turned his truck when he did, they would have passed on impact. Story 55. Back in the 80s, my daddy would sometimes go trucking when his union went on strike. The story that has stuck with me was about a dark night. It's been so long I can't remember if he told me any details about where or when. He passed away a few years ago and I'm not a necromancer, so I can't ask him to fill in the gaps. Sorry about that. He told me he was driving a semi, as I mentioned, and alongside of him, on the other side of some kind of fencing, he saw a metal bull. I suppose it was reflecting some kind of light to appear metallic. Maybe his light shone on it, or maybe the moon was full. That's all speculation. I do know he called it a metal bull. The thing is that he was driving pretty fast. My daddy was a terrible driver. He even bought radar detectors when they became available. So he had to be going a pretty good clip. The bull stayed right next to him. Heading up along that fence line as fast as he was driving. Then, the fence took a sudden and straight shot off to the right as fences do. The bull instantly made the turn without slowing down. It freaked my daddy out. But that is all that I really know. Story 56. I'm not a trucker, but what the hell? I left my girlfriend's house one evening around midnight and I saw a body in the middle of the street. It was a dead-end side street, so not much traffic. I stopped in front of the body and flashed my lights. Nothing. I pulled up alongside the body very cautiously, this is how zombie movies start, and asked if they were okay. The woman began sobbing uncontrollably, still in the street. I told her to get up and get on the sidewalk, or I would call 911 for her own benefit. She ignored me, so I drove down the street a little bit and called the police. I saw in my rearview mirror that she got up, walked 2 steps, and then collapsed again. I left, figuring the cops would take care of it. It was just outside my girlfriend's house, about 2 houses down. I called her and told her almost immediately after calling the police. She went out on her porch to look, and the girl was gone. Felt necessary to mention I'm not a trucker. Story 57. Not my story to tell, but my dad's. He doesn't share his stories much, probably because he's a gentle soul. My dad drove Hets that hauled M1 Abram tanks during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Desert Storm. And from what I know, he's seen a lot. From children that, at the time of his deployment, jumped or were thrown in front of vehicles to get them to stop for an ambush, to fellow drivers being hit by IEDs on the road. But one that definitely gets to my dad that I know of, I'm mostly paraphrasing because he's only told the story once or twice and doesn't go into much detail, was one time when he had to stop to fix something wrong with the truck. It's been a while, and I have a terrible memory. He was immediately surrounded by a giant group of jihadists, I think that's what he said, that were trying to hurt him, and supposedly, he was only armed with a pocket knife and tried to fend them off while his buddy popped off several rounds from his rifle to scare them off. Like I said, he didn't go into much detail with me, but he said that was the one that made him fear for his life the most. On a lighter side, he said he doesn't like camels because they're mean and spit a lot. Story 58. I'm not a truck driver, but I drive quite a bit and I've seen some things. About 20 years ago, I was about 30 miles from home at a Home Depot getting some home DI. I felt my gut gurgling and liquefy, so I dropped everything and stupidly didn't us the restroom there. I was sure I could get home. About 30 miles, but I could do it. I'm doing pretty well, got a good clench happening, and traffic is good. I'm on the 101 and C, and there are 2 or 3 cars ahead of me, when suddenly the car directly in front of me essentially pulls a pit maneuver on the car in front of it. Due to how fast we were all going, it launches the 2 cars into the most spectacular car crash I've ever seen. I'm going 60 mph, and my jeans just fill with hot feces. The shock of seeing the accident made me crap. I shat so very much. I wanted to pull over and help the people I'm sure are severely injured or dead, but I had to speed by in my own mess, having the most conflicting and confusing feeling. It was absolutely humiliating and yet humbling at the same time in many ways. So far, that's the worst thing that's happened on the road to me. It was just awful. Story 59. Not too chilly a story, except for the weather. Obligatory, not a trucker, but truckers were involved. One night, I was driving my car home on I-84 WB in Eastern Oregon. It was snowing, and I wanted to get home. but first I had to get down Dead Man's Pass. Real name. This pass is 6% grade, 6 miles long, winding, and drops 2,000 feet in elevation. I'm going down slow and carefully, hoping not to lose control. The only other vehicles were trucks. They were taking it slow too, but I was still very nervous that their traction or brakes would fail. Finally, made it down, pulled over, and took a deep breath. Story 60, not a trucker, but one time I was driving to the town over to get McDonald's at 11 at night, and I got a call from Walmart in the town I was heading to stating, "Hey, I'm off work, could you come pick me up?" Promptly followed by a couple of ums and UHs and hanging up. The especially creepy thing about this is that I'm not from either of the towns I was driving between, so no one would know my number. Needless to say, I stopped by Walmart that night as I was worried it was a friend that needed help and couldn't talk because this Walmart is just off of I-80 in Nebraska. Luckily, it seems as it was an incredibly random coincidence. I even called the few people that would have known my number by here just to make sure they were okay. Story 61. I used to drive snowplow on the 175 in the province of Quebec, a 200-kilometer highway between Quebec and Saguenay. This used to be a deadly road before because it was a single road with face-to-face lane. One night during a really heavy snowstorm, I was making my way. The road was closed to traffic because off the storm, but we had to stay on the road in case of emergency. I was going light off. Only my strobe lights were flashing. We see far and better like this. I was in a curve when I saw on a snow pile, off the road, a man standing. Only a cap and a t-shirt, looking at me. I remember seeing his flashing shadow behind him from my strobe light. Stopped 50 feet in front of him and opened my backup light to see nothing, absolutely nothing. The other snowplow behind was coming up to me. So I asked him if he saw something on the side of the road that say no. Next summer, I went to the Bagotville Air Show from Quebec and saw, at the exact same place I saw him across. It was covered in the snow, so we don't see them in the winter. A young man passed in a car accident right where I saw the man in the winter. Still give me chills. Story 62. Driver here. It isn't a spooky story to say, but one that left me uneasy because of a fear I have. I'm terribly afraid of someone using me as a means of an out. Too many stories of that happening to other drivers. So here's what spooks me out. I was running up Route 15 here in VA, going to make my stops. It was a cold and drizzling night at about 10 p.m. when I spotted a disheveled-looking woman standing in the tall grass to my right, looking straight at me. I wasn't able to see this woman until the front of my truck was about 5 yards or so was in front of her. I didn't know whether to slam on my brakes and try to stop a 35-ton vehicle or hop to God she didn't jump in front of me. On the way back through, I kept on high alert and as to watch out for her. Like I had said, not spooky, but certainly unnerving whenever you're not expecting someone. Story 63. My cousin went on a gap year to Australia a few years ago. He drove across the country in a camper van and had two creepy tales. The first one was they came across a broken down car at the side of the road. The guy flagged him down and my cousin slowed down but locked his doors because something didn't feel right. He then noticed a couple more guys emerging from the trees with baseballs and blades and floored it out of there. The same week, he turned up at a campsite after driving hundreds of kilometers and the police were there and turned him away. He was pissed off because the next site was over an hour away, but he drove it anyway. Turns out there was a madman running around. Not long after he pulled away from the first campsite, the naked man appeared on the site and lost a French couple that were camping there. I did see a news article about it when it happened, but I can't find it now. I used to drive buses and I did what we called the first sign on shifts that started between 3-4 a.m. One morning with a workmate at the depot, we go out into the yard to start our buses up. Then I hear him scream and then see him come bolting out of his bus. Scared the crap out of me as to what was happening. So I tentatively go and investigate. Turns out there was a homeless man asleep in his bus. And when he started the bus, it woke him up. But the homeless guy did not say a word and just walked down the bus to get out, scaring the crap out of my coworker when he was right on top of him. We used to have a good laugh about it after the fact, but at the time it was scary as crap to experience. I thought someone was trying to hit him at first. Story 65. So I'm just finishing up my usual shift actually. About an hour or so from town, I grab myself a burger. As soon as I get back on the road, my buddy starts going off on the radio about seeing some weird crap. I didn't think anything of it. It gets lonely out at night, right? But then, as soon as we cut off, right out of nowhere, this woman steps in front of my truck, right in the middle of the woods, too. So I'm like, duck, and I slam the brake, but over she goes. I got out to check on her, and she's totally mangled. But then, this crap gets worse, because this other woman comes up behind me and bites a chunk off my shoulder. Must have been a tweaker or something, but anyway, I booted back to the truck and got the hell out of Dodge. Damn, this crap hurts. Come to think of it, I'm feeling a bit out of it, and my driving's off. Hope I don't bump into some bikers or a cop before I shack up for the night. Story 66. My dad has been a truck driver for over 40 years. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but the craziest thing he's told me was that he was driving one night and saw an accident on the other side of the road. He's not one for stopping. and I'm not sure if police were there yet, but he kept going. He then felt like he ran something over and he didn't think anything of it and kept going. It wasn't until a few miles down the road that the cops pulled him over. Turns out a woman had crashed her car and flew through the windshield, landing on the other side of the road. As it was dark, she was barely seen. Kind of screwed him up for a while. Story 67. My dad was a short-haul trucker for most of his adult years. He retired because of how many people he saw driving distracted. Not just texting either. He saw people doing their makeup, watching movies, reading newspapers. He even saw someone eating a plate of pancakes once. While he was never in an accident, he witnessed accidents, aftermaths of accidents, and spoke with a lot of colleagues about their experiences after a semi would become involved with a smaller vehicle due to the car's driver not paying attention. An 18-wheeled big rig can't stop fast enough to save the life of the 18-year-old who decides he needs to send this dank meme to his buddy. Story 68. Not a trucker, but I used to work for a cleaning company a while ago, and we worked late into the night sometimes. One night it was around 2 a.m. and I was driving a coworker home who didn't have a car, but since he only lived a half mile from my house, I didn't mind dropping him off. Anyways, we saw these two guys walking down the road. It was 2 a.m., so there were no cars at all. Just these two guys on this dark road in the middle of the winter at 2 a.m. One stood in the middle of the road in an effort to stop us and raised his arms, but I just went into the left lane and drove around him. After I dropped my coworker off at his house, I went back the way I came to my house and saw the two guys were still there, and one tried blocking the road again, but I just sped past him. Pretty sure they were trying to set up a carjacking. Story 69. I'm not a trucker, but I've always come across this cutout of Bigfoot that someone keeps moving around near the highway, hiding it in the shade of the trees so you can see it, but are unable to notice right away that it's not real. It's just a pitch black silhouette cutout with bright red eyes and about 5 feet tall. Every time I see it, I get chills, until I realize at the last minute that it's just a cardboard cutout. If I ever find the guy who came up with that idea, I'm seriously gonna slug him. Story 70, not me, but my dad. There was a bad backup at night, and he recognized his friend from Washington State Patrol and stepped out there where like 20 other truckers standing outside their trucks. He walks up to his friend, asks him what's wrong, and friend points behind a 21-year-old girl in a Honda sports car pass, still strapped in by her seatbelt. Now my parents had just had me. He went back to the truck and stared at my picture for the rest of the night. Story 71. My dad has been a trucker for at least 30 years. When he was still doing long trips, he was in NY City one night, stopped in the Bronx to look at his map, still uses atlases to this day, and locate the facility he was supposed to arrive at. It was late and dark, but he was in his truck. Then a man starts yelling, "Hey, do you need some directions?" To which my dad replied, he didn't, and he had it covered. The dude was sketchy. Then he starts to climb up on his truck, and his friends join him on both sides of the cab, all banging on the windows like, "See him on, we'll help you, blah, blah, blah." My dad put his truck in drive and skirted on out of there, causing them to jump off and yell, "Duck you," and all that crap. He said he never stopped there at night again. El Mayo Story 72. My dad is a trucker, and one night as he was taking a nap, he woke up and saw someone looking through the front window watching him. He was on a bed in the back and got startled. Then he noticed the window was open a little bit because it was in the middle of summer in Australia, and saw this stranger's hand reach for the keys to unlock the car. My dad yelled at him and scared him away and drove home immediately. Story 73. Not me, my bio dad's brother, driving home real late one night, last year, middle of summer, in the middle of Canada, going probably 80 or 90 kph when a guy walked in front of his truck. He was as crack naked, and from the biopsy, is that the right word, on most of the substances known to man. My uncle, we aren't very close with that side of the family, hence bio dad, swerves to the side of the road and calls 911. He quit his job, now suffers from PTSD, and refuses to drive any sort of motor vehicle. He moved to an apartment less than a block away from the grocery store so that he didn't have to drive there. Hates all people now too, and from what I do remember of him, he used to be really cool. Story 74. Not me personally, but I witnessed this while in the passenger seat of my papa's truck. We were driving down the freeway at about 3 a.m. just talking about the day. I wasn't paying attention, but he just cut the conversation off completely and immediately said, "Do not look at the road." Being a kid, I didn't listen. I turned back to the road to catch a man jumping off of the freeway overpass onto a truck in front of us. Craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Happened about 10 years ago. Story 75. Not a trucker, but saw the immediate aftermath of a death by highway truck from a mentally unstable woman on my way to work off the 10 West in SoCal, circa 2011. It happened about 1 minute ahead of me, so well before first responders were there, and traffic was just kind of going around the scene. The thing I remember most, though, was her shoes that were about 200 feet past her body. Poor lady. Huge dose of mortality. Story 76. I was driving late one night and I saw this weird animal crossing the highway. It looked like a really lanky dog, black or dark brown with a skinny thin tail. I saw it when it was already across the slow lane on my side of the road. It was probably 150 feet from me when I saw it reach the grass and take off on its hind legs into the woods. Story 77. Not me, but my dad has been a lorry driver all his life. He said the creepiest thing he ever saw was when he used to deliver the animal food to farms. Early hours of the morning, driving down a country road. Just a man standing there in a suit. On the side of road, just stood there, staring, as he drove past Story 78. Not chills, but it kind of made me laugh. I saw a guy pulled over by the police with his hatchback open. There were loads of substances, because it was green, being pulled out and placed on the sidewalk. Despite that, I'll never forget the look on the guy's face. It basically looked like he was thinking, well, crap. He didn't look scared, he didn't look angry, he didn't even look sad. He had the look of extreme inconvenience. Story 79. I watched someone run from the shoulder of the interstate in front of the truck next to me to end life. He left a note in his car. On a separate occasion, I watched a motorcyclist hit a deformation in the road while passing a truck and got thrown off his bike and smashed. Truckers of Reddit. What are some secrets of the road that most people don't know about? 1. We can see everything you are doing in your vehicles. Makes for some interesting viewing sometimes. 2. We know where all the speed traps cops are, thanks to drivers further ahead, busting out the hiding spots via CB. If all the trucks start slowing down, you should too. 3. A lot of trucks are governed and cannot drive over a certain speed. Some of them are trying to get out of your way, and some of them are ducking with you for fun. 4. You feel like dying today? Cut off a cow wagon, cattle hauling truck. 5. We aren't all dirty abuser. Most of us have families at home, and this is our job. Story 2. Changing lanes back and forth constantly to jump one car ahead at a time will not get you to your destination much faster, and you're an a-hole. Also, that weird sticks behind your steering wheel tells other people what direction you're about to steer your car. Story 3. If you have miles to cover, the best time to roll is at night. Get with a pod of trucks, give everyone space, and roll. Missing day traffic and bullcrap is a real treat. The kids sleep, you skip hotel room nights, and get to use the pool in the daytime. Early check-in, late checkout, etc. really adds up the tollers and drops the stress levels by a mile. Story 4. Not a trucker, but I do spend a lot of time on the road. I guess one thing that surprises me, since I used to think it was pretty common knowledge, is the meaning of flashing head taillights. If you see a trucker in the right lane trying to get around a slower truck, and he signals his intention of moving to the left, flashing your headlights lets him know it's clear to move in front of you. The same also works if the trucker is moving back to the right lane. His/her rig is clear of your vehicle, and he can move over. You will usually see them flash their taillights or running lights back at you as a thank you. Story 5. There aren't much secrets, just to pay attention to the road conditions and signs. Don't tailgate trucks because you will get decapitated upon impact. Also, don't stick to the side and blind spot of a truck the whole way. Stay behind trucks or blast past us if you're passing. Wind can knock empty box trucks to the side pretty heavy, as you'll notice some trucks sway a bit. When a lane is merging into my lane, I see every driver that slams the throttle to get ahead of me and cut me off. I get that no one likes being stuck behind a truck, but don't be that banana all the time. It screws with me and your fellow commuters behind us more than you think. In heavy traffic, stick to one lane because typically you don't gain more than a minute when you swerve in and out of different lanes like in a hole. Story 6. Here's a secret. Don't rent a ducking motorhome. You can barely drive a Honda Civic. There's no way anyone should be allowed to duck off down the road in a 25er motorhome. I've seen so much unbelievably dangerous behavior from people driving those Canadream or Cruise America units. Story 7. I see you texting. I see the other guy spazzing out because he can't get one car ahead of where he is. I see you getting roadhead. I see that your kid dropped their bottle and you're trying to get it. But when you are on the road, your job is to drive, and I can't stop in the space that you can. Let me know what you intend to do so that I can have the time to adjust. I'm a husband and a dad. I don't want to hit anyone while I'm at work, or any time really. But Story 8. I'm not a trucker, but one showed me a secret trucker teamwork I'd never seen before. I'm in Kansas City on the interstate during 5 o'clock rush hour traffic and miles ahead. There is road construction, the kind of construction where it narrows down to one lane and everything thinks they can merge at the last minute. And when they don't, it ducks everything up for the rest of us. Well, this one merger is about 10 miles ahead and traffic is moving at the speed of smell. So slow, if your foot slipped off the brake, you're going too fast. I had been in my lane for about 45 minutes and I ended up next to this rig. I looked over at him. He acknowledged me. We exchanged head nods and continued to wait. At this point, the lanes would intermittently gain some ground, then return back to little to no movement. Somehow I ended back up next to this trucker. Again, exchanging glances. This time he had his eyebrows up, like he had something to say, so I raised mine with a friendly, yeah, look on my face. He just showed me his hands, indicating I stayed parallel with him. I thought to myself, this isn't going to do anything but piss everyone off, which I was okay with anyway, so I did just that. After about 10 minutes, speed started to pick up 10 mph, 20 mph. Before I knew it, we were up to speed. I eventually caught on that what we did was eliminated GTs from going back and forth in the lanes, jamming up traffic to gain one spot, and at the same time allowed people to get into the lane they needed to be in without clogging the lane. To this day, that was the equivalent of the Fonz hitting the jukebox for me. Story 9, Trucker here. If I switch to the left lane for no apparent reason in the middle of nowhere, it's because there's a hazard, broken down vehicle or cop ahead on the shoulder. Please don't immediately pass me on the right. Wait 30 seconds. I'll get back over after it's clear and everyone goes home safely. Story 10. Truck drivers from different companies like to duck with each other all the time, but when we see someone who isn't a trucker ducking with one of our own on the road, tailgating, cutting off, swerving in front of, etc., we will coordinate like the Blue Angels to make that person's life a living hell. Story 11. CDL driver. Here with 4 years experience on the road. That space between me and the other truck isn't for you. It's just to keep a good braking distance. If you go between us, we might get a little closer together for a few moments to try and get you uncomfortable. Don't cut in front of me. I'm hauling a good 1,000+ kgs of batteries in my trailer, and I can't slow down as fast as your smart car can. We call them crap cars or dumb cars, usually because it's almost always them. Same goes for all cars though. Don't drive beside me. Either stay behind or pass. And if your riced up Civic is gonna blow its engine running next to me, you shouldn't attempt to pass me when I'm going 80 mph. Don't tailgate me. And if you do ride my ass, at least take me out to dinner and pull my hair while you're at it. I can't flash my lights like cars can for fear of blinding people. So my equivalent is a good old toot toot of the horn. If you hear my toot toot, then slow down. Most truck drivers curse so bad a sailor would blush. Don't turn to Channel 19 and expect some cartoony guys talking about flowers. A lot of guys have been on the road for a lot longer than they should have, and oftentimes stop caring about language. Tight intersections are a Karen to go through. If it's just you on the road at night and you see me moving over, turning onto your toad at a light and you back up, I swear, one day you'll have a 6.5 bearded man jump out and hug you. Because a couple who do that are the real MVPs. I can see the lap of the passenger seat. And yes, I have seen some things that are questionable. We all hate those dreaded words, wait station ahead. If knowingly driving near one, expect some pissy drivers. Yes, I do go 80 mph on the turnpikes, if there's few cars on. However, this is only if the road is clear I will go this fast. I probably should have clarified, and I rarely ever go this fast under full load since by the time I'm done accelerating, I usually need to brake a bit. Story 12. Merging onto a highway means that you are entering into traffic that has the right of way. If I move over to let you in, it's not because it's my responsibility. It's because I'm compensating for your poor abilities to merge with traffic. Let me back into the slow lane once you're on the highway. I was there for a reason. I'm governed at 62 mph. If you cut me off by 2 feet and hit a pothole at 60 mph, prepare to have a fist fight with a big rig. You are not ready for that. I can't explain the correlation, but stay a mile away from tanker drivers with hazmat materials like gas and explosives. Keep your distance from big rigs too, but avoid like a plague the tanker drivers on the road. Not only are they driving dangerous vehicles, but they can't drive for crap. They often cut off other big rigs by 2 feet or so and are generally all over the road with their vehicles. Off-tracking is when our back tires cross over the highway stripes when our tractor is still centered in the lane. We can lessen the frequency of this happening with good driving habits, but can't prevent it entirely. Empty trailers, tight curves, or high winds are often the reason for this, and it's just more reason for you to keep your distance around big rigs in general. Thank you to all the drivers that back up a little bit when you see me making a 90-degree turn onto a road, because you know I may have to swing into your lane. It is not possible to go from the inside lane to the inside lane around a curve without swinging into the other lane. I've tried it. While I'm at it, I have advice for other truck drivers. I have been overtrained to drive a big rig by driving teams and having personality conflicts with other teammates, which gives me the unique insight of many drivers. Everyone will tell you to use all your available space when making turns, backing, etc. That got me through many situations in driving. I wish they'd have told me to use every inch of your available space. That has made me a good driver. Exaggerate your turns. Use more than you need to, regardless of the strange looks you'll get. Tailgating has been mentioned towards other drivers. Truckers, you do this too, and duck you for that. Story 13. 1. We see what you are doing in your car. 2. Any license plate can be looked up and the owner located. 3. A lot of truckers leave their doors unlocked and their engines running when they are inside truck stops or loading and unloading. Also, companies that have trucks at their terminal usually have the keys inside them or under the hood. However, without special training, the average car driver, even one with manual transmission training, could not operate a tractor trailer. Heck, when I get into a new truck, sometimes it takes me a couple minutes to figure out how this one starts. Some have keys, some have push buttons, some have cutoffs. 4. The best sleep I've ever had was in the cab of a semi. That idling diesel engine just sings me to sleep. 5. If a trucker is keeping a good following distance in rush hour traffic, don't get in front of him because there is an open space. You risk your own life and you force him to slow down even more to create another safe following distance. 6. Ever seen a tank run over a car? A truck can do that to you. Stop texting, jacking off, talking on the phone, watching TV, reading books, putting on makeup. You're going to get yourself and others hit. 7. Most accidents involving a tractor trailer are caused by people in cars. 8. It's okay to flash your titties at us sometimes. 9. If a deer runs out in front of a trucker, our training requires us to take no evasive action. If we hit it, then we hit it. 10. The company I work for believes that there is no such thing as a non-preventable accident. The only thing I'm allowed to collide with and not be warned, disciplined, or fired is an animal. Dogs, cats, bears, moose, deer, etc. Even if a car hits me and the police say it was totally their fault, my company will still insist that I should have been able to prevent it. 11. Most companies allow drivers to bring friends with them. If you know a trucker and want to drive around the country for a couple weeks, you should ask him/her. Story 14. In an accident, the vehicle with the most lug nuts usually wins. Most of us are working constantly to try to keep idiots from hitting themselves by hitting us. We know we will probably walk away, but you won't. We see what you are doing. If you are a hot girl, every driver with a CB knows you are there. At traffic jams, we know what's causing it, and we already know which lanes are closed. We have parked and slept in some really ducked up places. We are in a much bigger hurry than you are. There are actually far fewer escort and substances out here than people think. Truck drivers are the better versed in politics than any other group of people anywhere. About 40% of us are armed. A lot of our vehicles have enough miles on them to have made several trips to the moon and back. Yes, our air horns work, and we love to blow them for the kids who ask. Almost all traffic jams are caused by cars. Yes, we saw you coming up the on-ramp, and no, we are not moving to let you in. It's your job to merge. I didn't accidentally cut you off. I did it on purpose, because you were being an asshat. That space in front of me in traffic, I didn't leave it there for you to dart into. It's the space I need to stop without running over the car in front of me. More. But I'm tired, because most of us work 15 hours a day. Story 15. A lot of trucks have speed governors, so if you see me passing another truck, and I'm only going 2 mph faster than them, we're probably both going flat out, and it will take a little while to get it over with. Just calm down and wait for me to get back over. You won't lose that much time anyway. If you see trucks ahead start slowing down or getting out of a certain lane, you should too. I drive at night and early morning, so I see a lot of sleeping car passengers. If you do the air horn gesture, I will gladly wake them up for you. It makes my day. This isn't a secret so much as a gripe. If I turn my blinker on, that means I'm going to merge into that lane, either take that opportunity to give me some ducking room, or pass me. Matching my speed when you're 10 feet behind me is a good way to get decapitated by the back of my trailer. If it can happen to Jane Mansfield, it can happen to you. Story 16. Land surveyor here. I spend about as much time on major interstates and roadways as your average trucker. On foot, of course. But still, anytime you see a sign that says survey crew ahead, watch the duck out. I will be standing in the road, not on the side, but on the dotted line. And please, for the love, if God, don't freak out and throw your hands in the air. As a matter of fact, anytime you see road construction signs, stop anything that isn't paying attention to the road. Story 17, that 6 cars worth of space ahead of me? It's not your invitation to get in front of me. It's the stopping distance I need to not hit the car 6 lengths ahead. If you get in that space and have to hit your brakes, you're getting a Peterbilt enema. Story 18. Here are some of the things to be aware of. 1. An emergency vehicle is any car or truck with emergency flashers on. Police, fire, and ambulance are emergency response vehicles. By law, we have to move over for any emergency vehicle. If our flashers go on, let us over. We'll be getting back out of your way once we pass, so long as you don't try to get around on the inside. 2. Want to piss us off? Pass us and change lanes 10 feet in front of us, with 2 miles of clear road in front of you. As said elsewhere, we can't stop fast. If your exit is less than a mile or 2 ahead, don't pass. You're more likely to cause an accident than save the 12 seconds 3. Our dispatchers schedule our arrival times so we can make the next pickup drop-off, not just this one. Traffic, construction, and small towns on us. Whys eat up time, and it adds up. When we pass, it's because we can lose 10 miles per hour if we don't. That's 90 minutes behind on a 400-mile drive. 4. Please disconnect your accelerator from our flashers. Normally, we're not trying to be a-holes about sharing the road. Everything you buy from a store got there on a truck, and the trucks only come when the store orders more stuff you bought. We both have to get to the store to make this happen. Story 19. Don't ride in people's blind spots. Be aware of where those spots are for the drivers around you and get out of that zone. Nothing annoys me more than being one of 2 cars for miles around and the other car just goes the same speed beside you in your blind spot. Why? Drive predictably. Don't drive with your ego. Gray cars really are harder to see. I never get pulled over because I do the speed limit. Riding with my wife gets scarier every day. Story 20. Okay, UK driver here. First off, that little badge you see on the back of trucks. If you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you. Completely 100% true. If you're in a car and you are so close you cannot see his mirrors, then he might not be aware of your presence and will not see you in his mirrors. Don't go down the inside of a turning wagon on a roundabout. The trailers don't always follow the wagon directly and will often need some of the inside space to turn. In the EU, all trucks are limited to 56 km/h by law. The drivers have very strict driver's hours regulations, and the tacho unit is now an electronic card reader often connected to the truck's main computer. A lot of modern European rigs have almost fully automatic gearboxes and cruise control. Watch out for sleepy drivers. It's the most common cause of accidents on roads all across the EU and applies to all vehicles. Most EU truckers no longer have CB radio, a few do, and are more likely to be using hands-free mobile phones. This is mainly because a lot of the largest haulage firms no longer allocate a particular unit to one driver. Every day that they go into the depot, they could find themselves behind the wheel of a different truck.